unaccompanied migrant children in Malta. The objective is to discover firsthand what promotes and what hinders well-being for these children, and for us to understand better their situation. Let us not turn our backs on this reality. Let us take every opportunity we can to advocate a comprehensive approach and demand from the European Union, its member states, and the international community an adequate response to this tragedy, a response based on empathy and humanity for people like us. Let us take every opportunity we can and strive for an international community that welcomes migrants in a safe and humane way, acknowledging the added value they bring, rather than choosing policies that continue to turn the Mediterranean into a cemetery. This loss of lives can be stopped. Thank you.
We thank Her Excellency for her address. Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Mohan Michael Barwani, President of the Maltese Indian Community in Malta.
Good evening, Her Excellency. I'd like to thank the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Malta for organizing this annual Peace Symposium, inviting me to be one of the speakers. My role today, I think, is to provide a Hindu perspective on what we're discussing this evening. I'd like to start with some facts. Hinduism, as we know, is the largest religion in the world, probably one of the actually it's the third largest religion in the world, I excuse myself, with over 1 billion followers. It is by far the oldest religion, can be traced back to over 5,000 years before Christ. An interesting fact is that unlike other religions, Hinduism has no single founder. It has been evolving over thousands of years, still is, and continues to do so. The word Hinduism has really no actual meaning because it wasn't founded as a religion. The name Hindu was originally given by people outside of India, especially Greeks and Arabs, to those living in the vicinity of the Sindhu River. So the way of life those people were following is called Hinduism. And this is a really interesting fact, as even when I was brought up, when I was young, my parents told me that Hinduism is a way of life, not just a doctrine to be followed, a list of rules to abide by. As Hindus, we believe in one God, named Brahman, but view other gods and goddesses as manifestations of him. Salvation is the ultimate goal of a Hindu life. It is easier to understand the basic concept of Hinduism if one knows the law of conservation of energy. For those who have a science background and have some interest in science, know the law of conservation of energy very well. It states, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Only one form of energy can be transformed into another. The sum of all the energies in the universe remain the same. According to Hinduism, the human body is perishable, but the soul is immortal and is subjected to the continuous cycle of birth and rebirth. The soul changes bodies as a living person changes his or her clothes. So the thing which we call death is actually just a transformation of soul from one body to another, as the energy changes from one form to another. This cycle continues after birth, so the ultimate goal of a Hindu's life is to attain salvation, freedom from the cycle of birth and rebirth. One can attain salvation when the soul of a person fully becomes one with the supreme spirit called Brahman, or God, which is eternal. Now this leads me to the next question, and something that is more pertinent to today's talk. We would say how to attain the salvation, which we call moksha. Well, there are a number of basic Hindu beliefs. There's the belief in karma, the law of cause and effect of which each individual creates his own destiny by his thoughts, words, and deeds. Many other sources of Hindu thought which inspire men and women to live the ideals of compassion and non-violence. The rishis who revealed the principles of dharma or divine law in Hindu scriptures knew full well the potential for human suffering and the path which could avert it. To them, one spiritual power flowed in and through all things in this universe, animate or inanimate, conferring existence by its presence. To them, life was a coherent process leading all souls without exception to enlightenment, and no violence could be carried to the higher reaches of that ascent. They taught a philosophy of non-difference of self and other, asserting that in the final analysis we are not separate from the world and its manifest forms, nor from the divine which shines forth in all things and all people. From that understanding of openness arose the philosophical basis for the practice of non-injury and Hinduism's ascent commitment to it. We all believe in the existence of God everywhere. This is a basic belief for us, in particular Hindus, creates the attitude of sublime tolerance and acceptance towards others. Even tolerance is insufficient to describe the compassion and reverence we hold for the intrinsic sacredness within all things. Therefore, the actions of all Hindus are rendered benign or ahimsa. One would not want to hurt something which one revered. We look at nothing as intrinsically evil. To us, the ground is sacred, the sky is sacred, the sun is sacred, a wife is a goddess, children are divas, the home is a shrine, life is a pilgrimage to liberation from rebirth, which once attained is the end to reincarnation in a physical body. When on a holy pilgrimage, one would not want to hurt anyone along the way, knowing full well the experience on this path are of one's own creation. Very simply, ahimsa is abstaining from causing hurt or harm. It is gentleness and non-injury, whether physical, mental, or emotional. It is good to know that non-violence speaks only to the most extreme forms of wrongdoing. Ahimsa, on the other hand, goes much deeper to prohibit the subtle abuse and the simple hurt. Hindus oppose killing for several reasons. Belief in karma and reincarnation are strong forces at work in the Hindu mind. They know full well that any thought, feeling, or action sent out from themselves to another will return to them through others in equal or amplified velocity. What we have done to others will be done to us, if not in this life, then in another. As Hindus, we are thoroughly convinced that violence which we commit will return to us by a cosmic process that is unerring. Because of the knowledge of reincarnation, a Hindu knows that he may one day be in the same position of anyone he might be inclined to harm or persecute. There is a spiritual urge in every soul for peace. Even if a person is violent now, he or she inwardly yearns for peace. Man is essentially an instinctive, intellectual, superconscious, or soul person. The instinctive nature is based on good and bad, mine and yours, up and down pairs of opposites. The soul nature is based on oneness, humility, peace, compassion, love, and helpfulness. The intellectual nature, on the other hand, is based on trying to figure out both of the two. It juggles knowledge from the lower nature to the higher nature, and from higher nature to the lower nature. It works out formulas, finds solutions, and processes knowledge. People everywhere today are wondering, what is the best way to teach peace in the world? I think the best way is to teach families to be peaceful within their own home first, to settle all arguments and contention when they sleep at night, so the children can see that peace can be attained and then maintained through the use of intelligence. Humans do not have horns or claws, at least most of us don't, nor do they have sharp teeth. Their weapon is their intelligence. Children must be taught through the example of parents and by learning the undeniable facts of life, the basic tenets that an all-pervasive force holds this universe together, that we create with this force every minute, every hour, every day. And because time is a cycle, what we create comes back to us. It is up to us parents to create the peacemakers of the future. And remember, we teach children in only one way, by our example. Parents must teach children to appreciate those who are different, those who believe differently. Teach them the openness that they need to live in a pluralistic world where others have their unique ways, their life, their culture. Teach them the value of human diversity, the narrow-mindedness of a provincial outlook. Give them the tools to live in a world of differences without feeling threatened, without forcing their ways or their will on others. Teach them that it never helps to hurt another of our brothers or sisters. How do we bring individuals to this point? Of course, if the educational system promotes it, in every community, the greatest potential for peace will be achieved. The educational system is controlled by us adults. So they have to come to terms with the fact they must not be hurtful, physical, mentally, or emotionally, and accept the basic principles of this Sanatana Dharma, an all-pervasive energy, cause and effect, as I mentioned before, coming back in a physical birth until all scores are settled. Once the adults accomplish this, these basic principles of life will naturally be passed on to the next generation. Ahimsa begins in the home, in the bedroom, in the kitchen, in the garden, in the living room. When differences arise in the home, they must be settled. We cannot expect children to control themselves if we as parents do not control ourselves. According to Hinduism, to have a non-violent world would simply mean that all individuals have to somehow or other reconcile their differences enough so that the stress their differences produce can no longer take over the mind, the body, or the emotions, causing them to perform injurious acts. Again, this would begin in the home. Peaceful homes breed gentle people. Furthermore, the belief structure of each individual must allow for the acceptance of the eternal truths. As long as our beliefs are dualistic, we will continue to generate antagonism, and that will erupt here and there in violence. Non-violence should be redefined to include not only killing, but also causing injury, physically, mentally, or emotionally, even in the most subtle way. We can injure ourselves, we can injure our environment, we can injure nature's most creatures, and thus be a source of pain and sorrow. Or we can live a harmless life and be a source of healing and joy. What can we as individuals or institutions responsible promote non-injury? Talk about peaceful means of dealing with problems, not allowing even your words to promote injury or harm. Let our words bring peace into other people's lives and hearts. Work on our own consciousness, purify ourselves so that we are free from anger, free from hatred, free from wanting anyone to suffer either at their own hand or in any other manner. Not easy, I agree, but at least it's a start. We can work to strengthen our community and the people near us, reduce stress in our lives, be joyful. Do all this and we will do much to bring peace and tranquility to the part of our world. This is what Mahatma Gandhi did, and look at the difference he made. Even when confronted with intimidation and grave injustices, one of his many quotes was, "An eye for an eye will only make the whole world blind." Some cynics may argue that a small group of people based on a little rock in the middle of the Mediterranean, advocating peace and freedom to practice one's faith, will have little or no effect on the larger landscape. It won't create a strong enough wave to reach shores afar, or make a difference and lead to any substantial changes in mentality. But we must believe that if we start a ripple, we can create a wave. I believe that no particular religion teaches the only way to salvation above all others, but that all genuine religious paths are facets of God's pure love and light, deserving tolerance and understanding. I leave you with a quote for the man affectionately referred to as the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, who, when asked if he was a Hindu, he said, "Yes, I am, but I'm also a Muslim, a Christian, a Buddhist, and a Jew." Thank you.
We thank Mr. Barwani for that very interesting expose about Hinduism. Her Excellency, as you will appreciate, has a very busy schedule, so she has to leave us. I believe Mr. Atif has a small token. Our next speaker this evening will be the Reverend Dr. Joseph Alou, Professor of Ecumenical Theology and Islamic Studies. Reverend Alou lectures at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas and the Pontifical Institute of Arabic and Islamic Studies in Rome, as well as at the University of Malta. From 2007 till 2013, he was consulted to the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, and at present, he is a member of the Commission for Interreligious Dialogue of the Archdiocese of Malta. Reverend Alou, please.
I suggest caution. You might change your minds at the end of the speech. The topic I decided to address today concerns the relevance of religion and the future of society from a Christian perspective. Back in 1991, the English writer and newspaper columnist A.N. Wilson began his tract entitled Against Religion, Why We Should Live Without It, in the following way, and I'm going to quote from his introduction. It is said that the love of money is the root of all evil. It might be truer to say that the love of God is the root of all evil. Religion is the tragedy of mankind. It appeals to all that is noblest, purest, loftiest in the human spirit. And yet, there scarcely exists a religion which has not been responsible for wars, tyrannies, and the suppression of the truth. End of quote. Now, as a Christian and as a Catholic priest, I do not take such a statement lightly, nor do I dismiss it as frivolous prattle. True, such words and others similar are quite common nowadays. We hear or read them quite frequently on the local media circuit and in social networking. It is true that many atrocities have been perpetrated in the name of God. Massacres have taken place as a result of religious conviction degenerating into religious intolerance. The recent tragic events in the Middle East, in Nigeria and in Kenya, are but a few examples of a new phenomenon, that of a religion degenerating into ideological obsession. Nevertheless, all these do not rival the crimes of those who killed, believing they were gods. The greatest crimes of the 20th century, perpetrated by Nazi Germany, Stalinist Russia, North Korea, Cambodia, to name but a few, were committed by those who obsessively advocated the absolute secular state. But this argument, valid though it may be, is not enough to uphold the relevance of religion in society, still less its necessity. We therefore need to ask ourselves the question, what is religion all about? What role does it play in society? From a Christian perspective, the answer would be surprising to some, bewildering to others. Perhaps one of the descriptions that best captures this dilemma is given by Morris West in the introductory note to his novel, The Clowns of God. And I'm going to quote from that. Once you accept the existence of God, however you define him, however you explain your relationship to him, then you are caught forever with his presence in the center of all things. You are also caught with the fact that man is a creature who walks in two worlds and traces upon the walls of his cave the wonders and the nightmare experiences of his spiritual pilgrimage. End of quote. being a religious person in no way precludes a constant struggle to believe. Quite the contrary, it presupposes it. Nor does it avoid the fact that penetrating questions have to be posed daily in the light of what we see taking place around us, what is written in newspapers, what we discuss in canteens or at parties. Such an attitude lies at the heart of the Judeo-Christian tradition. We see this, for example, in the life stories of famous biblical characters. Very few were ready to accept, without contest, the call of God. Moses pleaded an impediment of speech. Job, an afflicted and broken man, cursed the day of his birth. He pleaded with God to rid him of his life of misery. Jeremiah accused God of having deceived him and driven him to the verge of despair. Jonah fled from God in a futile attempt to avoid taking up his mission, and then became angry because God showed mercy on the population of a city to which he was sent to herald its destruction. I knew it. I knew that you were up to something, and I find your mercy upsetting. Well, he didn't say that exactly in those terms, but I think that was his mood. The psalmist breaks down in an anguished cry to God. You have made us like sheep for the slaughter. You have made us the taunt of our neighbors, the derision and scorn of those about us. Jacob went so far as to engage in hand-to-hand combat with God on the banks of the Yabok. Going back to A.N. Wilson, the writer penned another article in 2009, 18 years after his book Against Religion. This time, the article was entitled, Why I Believe Again. And here he describes his return to the Christian faith. He admits, and here I'm quoting from him, my departure from the faith was like a conversion on the road to Damascus. My return was slow, hesitant, doubting,